Good morning, namaste. Let's begin in a comfortable seat. And today's a yin class, which, like yesterday, we also want to start by centering ourselves before we begin the practice. So you can bring your hands to your knees or in your lap, whatever is more comfortable. And you can have the hands resting down or have them lifting up. Close your eyes. Start to lengthen the breath. Just letting yourself arrive. Feeling your belly rise as you inhale and fall as you exhale. Inhale, reach the arms up overhead, palms meet. Exhale, hands to your heart center. Inhale fully. Exhale fully. Inhale for Om. Open your eyes, namaste. So, yin. I'm going to talk, whilst we get into the first pose, about the history of yin yoga. But before we come into the pose, we're working all of the lower half of the body today, so our hips and our legs. And the way that yin works is that it's kind of informed by Chinese medicine as well as by yoga. So that's the idea of qi and the idea of us having meridians in our body. And it's not a science lesson, but that's why in yin it's nice to focus on like specific parts of the body, because it means then we're working with the qi through those particular aspects of our anatomy. So today it's the lower half of the body. And the idea with yin is that you start the pose by coming to where your first edge is, and then you find stillness in your first edge. So it's not about like trying to come into the fullest expression that you have, flexibility wise, compression wise with your skeleton, but the first notch, the first place you feel it. And then as you stay in the pose, we're working the myofascia, we're working the joints, the ligaments, getting deep into the tendons in our muscles. Then you will start to open up more and will naturally just start to open up more. But it's absolutely not about like, what's the biggest expression you can do, because that's yang energy, that kind of pushing. It's a very masculine way of approaching exercise. And when I say masculine, I don't mean male, but the masculine energy, the yang energy. So we want this soft, feminine moon energy, which is just gently coming into something. And whilst you just let yourself find that first edge, it will be easier to then experience all of the other things that are going on in the poses. So come to your first edge and find stillness, and that stillness is really important, because if there's any movement in the body, then it will be harder to quiet the mind. So if you want, of course you need to adjust and get comfortable, but then once you're in it, try not to fidget. And the eyes are very important. So you either close the eyes, so the eyes stop moving, or find a drishti, a focus point, that will help you to then, have that focus with the eyes to then cultivate this stillness throughout the body. So those things said, the first pose that we're going to come into today is butterfly. So if you have sciatica or any back problems, then sit on a cushion. And I like to sit on a cushion because I know that tilting my pelvis up is helpful for me when I'm doing a big kind of external rotation with the hips, like we are in butterfly. And the soles of your feet are together, but you don't need to hold the feet. You can just let the hands be, and then you can start to come down and find your first edge. You can have the palms on the floor. You can take them to the hands, but I think sometimes if they're on your hands, there's the temptation to pull yourself, and that's not what we want to be doing. We want to let gravity move us into where our edge is with the pose. So find that edge, find stillness, and we're going to be here for 4 minutes. If it's comfortable, you can drop the head down. The curve in the spine is absolutely fine as long as it's not uncomfortable. But if it doesn't feel good to drop your head, then you can keep the head lifted, but not putting any excess force into keeping it up. So you should feel the opening in your groin and in the inside of the tops of your legs. We're not targeting the spine, so no need to stretch yourself any further forward than is comfortable. And as you find stillness there, I am going to talk a little bit about the history of Yin Yoga, because yesterday I was talking about Ashtanga Yoga and Vinyasa Yoga, and all of those three words that we kind of preface the word yoga with, and you'll see them being advertised at studios, they're all born in the second half of the 20th century. So none of those terms are ancient yoga practices. And the history of that is that Hatha yoga is the kind of oldest type of yoga that was actively using asana, so actively using poses, and that dates back to kind of the 15th century. And then yoga first moved to America at the end of the 19th century. And in those first few decades of yoga being in the 20th century, there was a very, very gentle practice of hatha being practiced, and obviously by a very small number of people, that was very much focused on being on the floor, and like only a small number of poses that people would come into in order to help them achieve more in meditation. And this teacher called Krishnamacharya, he went to America, and he's the first yogi who kind of popularized yoga with Hollywood. It first was really popular in LA, and he was a massive influence in bringing yoga to America. And Krishnamacharya was the teacher of two of the most important people in terms of how we practice yoga today, and those people are BKS Iyengar and Patabi Joyce. And those two men, Iyengar and Joyce, they both then created their own types of physical practice of yoga, which is what's really informed how we practice yoga today. So Iyengar created Iyengar yoga, no shit, which maybe you've practiced, but it's very, very about precision of how the body is positioned in different yoga poses, and it uses lots of props to help people come into the expression of the pose that still has the right alignment if they're not yet got the flexibility to go into the full expression. And we just got a last few breaths here in butterfly. So take your final inhale, and then exhale, come up. And we're going to come into the next pose where I will continue with our history lesson. And you can choose to totally zone out. There's no need to listen to my voice. If you know this stuff, you're not interested in this stuff, or you just want to focus on going inwards. We're going to come now to dragonfly. So that means you can stay on the cushion if that's more comfortable for you, and bring the legs wide. But we're not trying to be active in the legs, so you can kind of bring the legs out and then let go of any effort in the legs. And if it's not comfortable for you, then bend the knees here. So either having knees bent or extending, but again, remember your first edge of where this is, because we're going to be here for a long time and we will open more as we go. So the first thing we're going to do in dragon is to bring your dragonfly is bring your right hand behind you, and the left hand then comes outside the right thigh, lengthen through the spine and twist over your right shoulder. So let yourself have the twist in the abdomen and the lower spine rather than in the shoulders or the chest, and not in the neck. The movement's coming from the middle of the body, and then the upper body just follows that. So find your edge, find stillness, find a drishti or close your eyes, and either continue to focus on your breath or you can listen. So Iyengar, still very influential yoga teacher today. He has passed now, but many people still practice Iyengar yoga. And the other student of Krishnamacharya was Pattabhi Jois. And Pattabhi Jois made Ashtanga yoga popular. So Ashtanga is what I talked about yesterday, which is where vinyasa yoga comes from, and it's a much, much, much more dynamic practice than Iyengar. Iyengar is like, coming pose to pose, holding them, working into the pose. Ashtanga is a set series of poses, progressing in difficulty. And the idea with Ashtanga is that you don't get given the next pose until you've mastered the pose before it. And the vinyasa that we practice today is all really a variation of Ashtanga yoga. So, yeah, hugely influential Ashtanga yoga. And these two types of yoga, which are both very intensely physical practices of yoga, especially Ashtanga, if you've ever practiced it, you will know. You're not supposed to have fans, you're not supposed to have AC. The idea is that you sweat, it's hard, and that's really when yoga became very, very, very popular in America, with people practicing either Iyengar or Ashtanga yoga. So that's kind of in the 70s that starts to be popularized, and then massively in the 80s. And that's what people understood yoga to be. And some of these early American yoga practitioners looked deeper into the history of yoga, as well as into Chinese medicine, and started practicing this other type of yoga, which at the time was, in America, was a very strange way to be practicing, which was practicing on the floor, very gentle variations of the poses and holding the poses for a long time. So rather than having to have a perfect alignment like you would in Ashtanga, or rather than having to have a lot of movement, like you would in Iyengar, or a lot of movement like you would in Ashtanga, they started practicing this very, very slow, steady practice of yoga. But the idea with their type of yoga is that it's not less intense, but the intensity comes from holding the poses. And that is where yin yoga, as we know it today, came from. Final inhale here. And exhale, come back to center. Maybe you want to widen the legs a little, but again, make sure that they're totally relaxed. You're not straining in the legs. Lengthen through the spine, bring the left arm behind you, right hand to the right thigh, and twist over the left shoulder. Moving from the belly, and what that means for Yin Yoga today is it is totally a Western practice. It was developed by Westerners in the West, but informed by the popularity of the physical practice of yoga from India and from Chinese medicine. So it's this kind of fusion practice, really, that was developed, I think, because the focus went so far in the yang direction of yoga with Ashtanga and Iyengar, that people kind of naturally felt the need to bring in this different type of energy to yoga. And with our yoga practice, we do want to be practicing both types, yin and yang. And with that some things, all things are a combination of two. So in a vinyasa class, at the end, we do come into a more yin focus whilst we unwind and come to Shavasana. Although you won't get that in Ashtanga class, there's no wind down in Ashtanga. So it kind of naturally developed. But the way it naturally developed was, interestingly, it was a return then to the type of yoga that was being practiced 100 years before the popularization of yoga being a fitness program and an exercise program and being something that people who were doing aerobics in spandex would want to do. It kind of, yin is a return to the roots. But I think what's also very interesting to know is the roots of the physical practice of yoga are really American. They're not part of an ancient Indian practice. It's what happened when yoga was popularized in America, because the yogis who first went to America could see that in order to benefit from the spiritual aspects of yoga, it was more helpful to put people into their bodies first, to get them to really be aware of their own bodies, rooted in their own bodies, in order to be able to reach the higher meditation practices and more spiritual sides of yoga. So that's just, that's a little history lesson if you didn't know. And I think it's really interesting to know those things, because it means then that the type of yoga we're practicing today, and I don't mean today, but generally today, it's a type of yoga that's developed for our times. We're not practicing the way that people were practicing 7,000 years ago in India. We're practicing in a way that is perfect for the type of practice that we need today. So I find that to be a very inspiring and meaningful thing, to think that all the things that have happened since India first came to the West at the end of the 19th century, that's meant that we've created this new practice that's obviously just millions of people benefit from today, and millions of people find meaning in their lives today. And I think that that's not coincidence that the rise of the popularity of yoga happened with the decline of the popularity of organized religion in the West. I think that yoga is a way for people to find meaning when we no longer, collectively have divine faith. Okay, inhale fully, and exhale, come back to center. I'm going to start to talk less. We've done the history of yoga, but I never knew those things until I read books and learned about them. No one was telling me those things in a yoga studio, but I think it's it's really useful to know the roots of where stuff comes from. Okay, so we're still staying in dragon, so if you want to lift your hips for a minute and maybe shake anything out, we're now going to come forward. So remembering that we want to find our edge. Excuse me if anything is popping out, I hope not. Reach forward with your hands and bend the knees if it's uncomfortable, and bring the legs closer together. And we're going to find our edge, come to stillness, and just let gravity drop us down. So the focus here is still on the insides of the thighs, the groin, the inner hips, as we've been working in butterfly and the two twists in dragon 2. Around the spine, there's no need to be trying to overstretch the lumbar spine. Finding stillness, steadiness in the breath. Breathing into your hips, your groin. And on your exhale, maybe you can move deeper. One more minute here. Exhale, you go deeper into the pose. Final inhale, and exhale slowly, slowly. Start to come out of the pose. We're going to be very gentle. Support yourself with your fingers behind you and let the legs come in. We're just going to come to Sukhasana, easy pose, to feel the rebound. So close your eyes and experience this chi, this pranic energy that we've created in our hips, our groin. Feel the energy that has been really focused on that area for the last 20 minutes. Feel that start to dissipate back around the body. come to sit in antler pose. So antler pose is either you're going to sit on your heels if it's comfortable, or you can sit between your heels if it's painful for you to sit on your heels. You can also bring a block or a cushion between your legs if that's more comfortable. But we're just going to be here for 1 minute, and we want to open up the quads. So just sit, close your eyes. Open the eyes. Now we're going to come to one-legged straddle pose. So extend the left leg out and bring your right foot outside of the hip if it's comfortable, or you can stay sitting on the heel if that's more comfortable. But if you can bring the foot outside the hip, that's better. Maybe it feels better to move the flesh on your calf just out slightly. And the right knee can be quite far away from the left if that's better. If you're quite open in your quads and you've got a wide range of motion in the internal rotation, then the knees can be closer together. Also, you have the option to have the foot tucked or bring the foot out to the side. And just let the left leg fall away, no need to hold any energy there. And we're gonna, maybe you stay here, but if you're comfortable to, then you start to come back, then you start to come all the way down. Make sure that you're not going to have your head on any horrible tiles that Kyle's about to. So, option to recline if it's comfortable. And if you're all the way down, ooh, big stretch, that feels good. Either have the hands above your head, but that can be quite intense. So if it's too intense, bring one hand to the heart, one hand to your belly. So target area here is the quads and the hips. And what we're doing in straddle pose is opening the whole of the front of the body. So yesterday's class we did a lot of work on the extension of the hip flexors with dancer pose in the quads and in the chest. So maybe you feel that today, you can feel the work we did yesterday. Or this is just another more gentle way to be still working with those same parts of the body that we used yesterday for our vinyasa class. I'm just going to put some music on because I'm very aware that there's a lot of noise that maybe you can or can't hear, but I don't want to listen to it. into the front of your body. Final inhale. Exhale. If you are on the floor, then bring your hands, one hand to your ankle, the other hand by your hip. Lift yourself up onto your elbows. And then come up. Extend the right leg. Take a rebound here. So just drop the hands. Let yourself experience the subtle differences in the right leg, the right thigh, the right hip. Open the eyes and bend the left knee, and slightly awkward transition. You're going to extend the right leg back. So if you know that you suffer from pain in your knee, either fold the mat over or bring a cushion or a blanket under the knee. And we're still working this quadricep, the right quadricep. And we're also really now getting into the hips. So the many options here for dragon pose, and obviously the further back the right knee is, the more intense the stretch is going to be in the hip flexor. The left foot can be behind the left knee, so when we do this pose so often we try to keep them in line. You can let that knee go over, and that's going to also bring the stretch into the left calf. So this is dragon with the fingers down. You can come to high flying dragon with the hands on the knees. And you can even have this overstepping dragon with the knee in front of the foot, or you can have the right angle with your knee. So find the one that feels best for you. I want to work more with my right quadriceps, so I'm doing this. I've got the right knee further back. And we're going to be here for 3 minutes. So it's a slightly more yang pose. We're not lying down anymore, but still let this yin energy come in. Close your eyes or find a drishti. Breathe into the hips. And even though the poses have different names in yin and in vinyasa. So in vinyasa we call a pose that looks like this Anjani asana, or low lunge. But here it's dragon, and they have different names because it's drawing attention to the fact that it's a totally different experience of the same pose, or the same position, I should say. In yin, we're not worrying about the aesthetic alignment, about how things are supposed to look. Where we put our hands doesn't matter, we can change that. All that we want to focus on is the target area in the yin pose. The target area is the groin, the hips, the right hip flexor, the right quadriceps. where we put the hands will change the expression of those things, but it's not key to the pose. So one more minute here if you want to adjust by either bringing the left foot further back so that you're getting more into the left calf, maybe move the right knee back if you've got a bit more space, or maybe bringing the hands up now. Final inhale here, exhale, and you have the option to stay in high dragon, or you can come to low flying dragon, which has both hands inside on the floor, and work the stretch this way. Of course, you can also bring the elbows down, or you can come into splits. So we're just going to be 2 minutes in this variation. If you feel like going for the splits, then you extend the left leg. Final inhale here. Exhale. Slowly come back out. And we're actually now going to step back to downward facing dog. So just feeling the rebound in downward facing dog. Letting yourself stretch out the backs of the legs. And then dropping back down onto your knees, come to the middle of your mat. And we're going to prepare for the other side by coming back first to antler pose. So either the heels, sitting on the heels, or sitting on the floor or a cushion with the heels out either side. And just a minute here to prepare the quadricep for the other side. Open the eyes. and prepare for one-legged straddle. So the right leg comes out and bring your left foot by your left hip if you allow that. Move the calf aside evenly on both sit bones, and you can have the left knee out, away if that's more comfortable, or bring the knees together. Relax the right leg and either staying upright or coming down. Finding your variation, finding your edge, and then finding stillness. You can hear the music clearly. This is the Ganesha mantra, and I'm playing it now on repeat to get it into your brains, because we're going to, obviously, well not obviously, if you don't know, we're going to be talking about Ganesha in Thursday's class and why he's so revered, what he represents, and this is a really beautiful mantra to Ganesha. Final inhale and exhale. Gently rise up. If you will recline, come to your elbows. Come up, extend the left leg, take a rebound, hands on the thighs. Open the eyes and preparing to come into dragon with the right knee forward and the left leg behind. So again, supporting the knee if you know that that's something that you need. And finding your variation. If it's dragon with the fingers down, high flying dragon, overstepping dragon with the right knee over the right ankle. minute of the pose, so if you want to either let yourself go deeper or find a slightly different variation, then come to that. Final inhale and exhale. We're going to spend 2 minutes either in low flying dragon or splits, or of course you can stay in the other variation. The low flying dragon, you can be on your hands or drop your elbows to the floor. Or if you want to come to splits, then working to extend the front leg. Listening to your body, so if you're somewhere that's too deep, then pull back if that feels better. Final inhale and final exhale. Start to come out of the pose. This time bring your right knee back. Knees as wide as the mat, feet together, and sink the sit bones to the heels. Come forward into child's pose. Inhale, look up, walk your hands back, sink your hips to the floor, extend the legs out. This is our final yin pose before we come to Shavasana, and it's caterpillar. So legs in front, My ultimate reaction is to flex the feet. No, let the feet drop. And maybe your feet naturally drop away from each other. Maybe they drop in, maybe they stay still. Let them drop. And slowly, slowly fold forward. Just letting the round come into the spine. Drop the head down. Focusing on releasing from the spine. If you want to bring the stretch more into your legs, then you can lengthen through the spine and gently stretch the tops of the hamstrings. Inhale, look up, exhale, come up, scoot yourself forward on the mat, let your feet fall out, away from each other, and round the spine as you come down to Shavasana. I'm going to leave the music playing as it sounds like there's some demolition or something going on outside, but just let yourself let go of your awareness of your breath, of your awareness of any sounds, your awareness of your body. Let yourself go inwards and experience the pranic energy that you have cultivated during your practice. movement, come back into your fingers, your toes, your hands, and your feet. Bringing your awareness back to the breath and lengthening the inhale and the exhale. Bring the feet together and inhale to reach the arms up overhead, giving yourself a big stretch. And exhale, release. Bend one knee, roll over onto the other side. Taking a moment in this fetal position before pushing yourself up to seated with the eyes closed. Inhale, reach the arms up, palms meet overhead. Exhale, hands to your heart center. Inhaling fully. Exhale fully. Inhale for arm. It's my pleasure to practice with you today, to share your energy. Thank you so much. Hari Om Tat Sat.